What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sports with Jake. Hope we're all doing well. Let's talk about some basketball. Just the scores from last night. Sixers beat the Magic 112-92. Sixers have played really well. They're 21-9. They've been top in the East for a while now. Joel Embiid's had another MVP caliber year. I don't think he should have won it last year, but he still has been, I would say, the second most valuable player in the league the last 3 years, I would say. He's probably the MVP right now, to be honest. I'm not a huge fan of Embiid, but I just don't love what he's done in the playoffs. Don't think he takes enough accountability either, but he's a phenomenal talent. And he's probably the MVP right now. And even the Orlando Magic lost, but they've also been playing very well. They're 18-12 right now. I did think they'd be better. They just have so much young talent. I love Paul Boncaro. I think he should be an all-star this year. He's had a phenomenal second season in the league. He was obviously the rookie of the year last year after being drafted number 1 overall by Orlando. But they've played really, really well, and I did think they'd be better. I didn't think it'd be this good. I thought they'd be like a playing team, but I didn't think they'd be a top 4 or 5 team in the conference. Raptors coast past the Wizards 132-102. They are so bad. 5-25. There's a couple of really, really bad teams in basketball right now. The Wizards are atrocious. They're 5-25. You got the Spurs like 4-24 or something. And you got out with the Pistons are holding a level 2-28 NBA record, 27 straight losses. And normally you have a team is like 10-22, and then they go out on just crazy losing streak, and they end up winning 16 games. They started off 2-1. I mean, I don't think they were going to be an above average team out that puts them on pace to win 40 plus games. I didn't think it was a snowball chance and how the Pistons would even sniff 40 wins. I'm not even sure they're going to win 30 games. They were clearly going to be a bad team this year. But, team was showing, some promise at least. You got 2-1. Like, all right, at least they won't be, they'll be competitive. Maybe they'll sniff 30 wins. I mean, maybe get often 5 or 6 games of a playing spot or something. And then they're like, oh yeah, we're actually really, really bad. 27%. I was like, what? It kind of came out of nowhere. Toronto hasn't been doing so hot either. They're 12-18. I think they're either the last playing team or on the outside looking in. They are not very good. Bucks beat the Nets 144-122. Giannis 32-10-8 in the loss. Nets didn't play like almost all their starters. Most of their starters didn't even play. And McCarron Brothers came out and said he was not happy about that. I don't get it. You got a team that comes in. You're a 500 team. Yeah, really only one guy that can hurt you offensively, and Mikal Bridges. I mean, Cam Johnson's okay. He's fine, Spencer Dinwiddie, he's fine, but outside of that, not a whole lot there. And you're playing, a top 3 team in basketball, the Milwaukee Bucks, and came in, they came in the second best team in the East besides the Boston Celtics, who of course are absolutely stacked. And I think the 3rd best team in basketball besides Boston and Minnesota. And that's team your extra stars are going to at least do it against the freaking like Pistons or the freaking Spurs or something where you can hypothetically still compete and win a game. Don't do it against a top 3 team in the league. And look what happened. They got smashed. Suns over the Rockets 129-113. Durant 27, 10, and 16 assists. Sengun with 24 in the loss. Alfred Sengun's been playing really well. Rockets got to a horrible start, but they have been playing well. Sengun might be an all-star tier. I like his game a lot. He's having the best year of his career. Thunder beat the Knicks 129-120. Big game from Shai, 36, 7, and 8. They also had 36 from Jalen Williams, who's a really good player. 36 points, 5 of 5 from 3, and no turnovers. He had basically a flawless game. They tried to fight back. They went down big early. They got the game close. Heading to the 4th quarter, and then the Thunder kind of pulled away a little bit. They were down. They gave up 38 points in the 1st quarter. They were down 13. And then so I was watching the Rangers, and then I was getting alerts. Oh yeah, Knicks down 13 at the 1st quarter, down 9 at the half. I'm like, oh, they're gonna get blown out by the Thunder. They're a better team, whatever. Then the Rangers, when they went up 5-1, about 5 minutes left, I was like, all right, the Rangers are gonna win. Let's flip on that game. And it was about a minute left in the 3rd quarter. They were down 4. I was like, oh, okay, maybe they'll win this game. And of course, they ended up losing by 9. So they fought hard. They're just Knicks are a decent team. Look, they're 17-13. But they're not good enough. Like Could they be a 5 or 6 in the East? Yeah, I'm sure they will be. But I don't think I'm not sure if they can win a playoff series. Like they definitely won't beat Boston. I don't think they'll beat Milwaukee. I'm not even sure if they beat Philly. Like maybe they can beat Philly. Maybe they can beat Orlando because Orlando's still really young. Unless they get, like maybe Orlando because they're really young. If you get Cleveland again, I mean, both teams are bringing back basically the same groups. So I have no doubt the Knicks will beat them again, maybe, or someone like that. But they wouldn't sniff Boston. Boston might sweep them. Milwaukee probably wins 6 games. Yeah, they beat them on Christmas, but for 1 or 2 hour times, Milwaukee beat them and wasn't even that close. So like they might be able to get a game or two from Milwaukee, but I don't know, think they could beat them in a series unless he like last year, like Giannis gets hurt again. Instead of missing 2 games, he misses like multiple series. Probably won't even beat Philly. They have no one that could even contain Joel Embiid or even Tyrese Maxey for that matter. So unless they get like Orlando, who's really young, or Cleveland, who they beat last year in 5 games, basically the same squad. They're banged up right now. Don't have their all-star point guard Darius Garland. Don't have a really good young center in Evan Mobley. Those rumors swirling that Donovan Mitchell might get traded in the offseason. Maybe, but they're gonna need to make a move either to get another knockdown shooter or maybe improve their defense because their defense is absolutely terrible. They were defending well for a while, but these last few weeks have just been atrocious. And the Cavs over the Mavericks won 13-110. 2020 game for Jared Allen, 24-23 along with 6 assists. And Luka had 39 points in a loss. By the way, some small piece of news. Did Denver Nuggets player Aaron Gordon, he's gonna be out indefinitely. On Christmas Day, he suffered dog bites. They hospitalized him. He had to have like surgery. He's away from the team right now, so I hope he's okay. Gotta be careful, I guess. Merry Christmas. God damn. I don't know if it was his dog or someone else's dog. That's wild. Couple of small signs in MLB for free agency. Both were by the Toronto Blue Jays. They picked up Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, 2-year deal worth $50 million. He can get another $1 million in incentives. He's a utility guy who's on the Yankees the last few years. Was pretty good for the Yankees. I thought he was decent. Not a great hitter. Actually, he hit 242, a 306 on base, 340 slugging. And he has 646 OPS, 6 homers, 37 RBIs. But he's a really good defender, can play all over the field. That's what he's there for. They also re-signed Kevin Kiermaier to a 1-year deal worth $10 million. He had a good year last year. He hit 265, he had 322 on base, 419 slugging, and 741 OPS, 8 homers, 36 RBIs. He's always been a Gold Glove caliber center fielder, can play all 3 outfield spots. He's won Gold Gloves in center field. Was always never a good hitter. He actually last year was one of his better offensive years. He's always got hitting 200, 210, maybe 220. Last year he hit 260 with 740 OPS. He was almost league average hitter last year, which is better than what he's usually done. But Toronto re-signs him. Seems like Kiermaier, he tried to test the open market, saying, right, everyone knows he's a great defender, but now he went out there and had a slightly better offensive year. Maybe he can get himself a bag. I guess didn't like what he was out there, so we called back Toronto like, hey, didn't really work out. Could I come back? And they got something done. So 2 small moves made by the Toronto Blue Jays. And let's talk about the NFL Hall of Fame. Then we got to talk about the Denver Broncos. That's all I have today. But let's talk about NFL Hall of Fame. The finalists were just from the NFL Hall of Fame for this year. We're actually for 2024. Well, technically not this year, but it will be this year in about 4 days. It's December 28th. The finals for 2024 were announced. You had Eric Allen, who was a defensive back a while back. He was at the Eagles for a while, also played for the Saints and the Raiders. You had Jared Allen, who I definitely think should get in. He's one of the greatest edge rushers of all time. He started with the Chiefs, he was with the Vikings for a while, then finished up with the Bears and the Panthers. Was a great player. I think he's up there in career sacks all time. You had Willie Anderson, long-time offensive tackle for the Bengals. Then he played last year in Baltimore. I think he should probably get in. You have Jari Evans. I'm not sure if he's a Hall of Famer. He was an offensive guard for the Saints for a while. He played last year in Green Bay. Dwight Freeney should probably get in. He was a long-time Indianapolis Colt. Was on the Colts team that won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. Then he played his last 2 years in San Diego with the Chargers. No, not his last two. And then he bounced around in Arizona, Atlanta, and he played his last year between Detroit and Seattle. Yeah, and Antonio Gates, which is definitely one of the greatest tight ends of all time. Long career with the Chargers, over 15 years. Then you had Rodney Harrison. It's an interesting one. He was between the Chargers and the Patriots. Obviously, he's now an analyst on NBC. He had a very good career. He was one of those guys who in Madden you would use the hit stick with. He could lay the wood. And good thing he played, in the '90s into the 2000s, because every hit he would have had would probably get flagged. He was a really good safety. Devin Hester, great kick returner of all time. I think he should absolutely be a Hall of Famer. The Hall of Fame just want to put him in for whatever reason. I think he should definitely be a Hall of Famer. He's the greatest of all time at what he did. Of course, man with the Bears, and he finished up in Atlanta. And then he played his last year between Baltimore and Seattle. But man with the Bears, in the mid to late 2000s, even in the early 2000s, in the early to mid 2010s, he was as dangerous returner as I've ever seen. Then we had Torrey Holt, who's on there. I think he's all Famer along. He was a great receiver for the Rams and finished up in Jacksonville. He was part of the great show on Turf with Kurt Warner and all those guys, and Isaac Bruce and all those guys. Andre Johnson, I think, is a Hall of Famer. He's on there. Long time receiver for the Texans. He was a stud for a while. Finished up in Indy and then in Tennessee. But with Houston, he was one of at least the 2 or 3 best receivers for a very long time in Houston. You have Julius Peppers, who I absolutely should be Hall of Famer. He's up there in all-time sacks all time. He played in Carolina for a very long time. Was also with the Bears and then briefly with the Packers. He started in Carolina, then he bounced around, and then he came back towards the end. Until he finished up. Fred Taylor, I'm not sure if he's a Hall of Famer. He was a running back for Jacksonville for a long time, then he finished up in New England. You have Reggie Wayne, like borderline should probably get in. Long-term wide receiver for the Colts. He was also on that Colts team that won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. He retired in 2014. Patrick Willis, who I think should be a Hall of Famer. Unfortunately, injuries cut his career short. He only played 7 or 8 years for the 49ers, but he was an absolute stud for all 7 years. If he was healthy, he's kind of like very similar to Luke Kuechly. I think definitely should be a Hall of Famer. But unfortunately, injuries cut their career a little short. If injuries didn't cut his career short, he probably played another 7 8 years, and it was probably one of the greatest inside linebackers of all time. And then Darren Woodson, who I think should be a Hall of Famer, a long-time safety for the Dallas Cowboys. Those are your NFL Hall of Fame finalists for this year. The Hall of Fame class is actually going to be announced February 8th, so that's actually not that far away. There's actually a lot of guys I would think should get in. There's only a couple of guys who you could argue shouldn't be in. Only guys who you'd say definitely shouldn't be in is maybe Eric Allen. You could argue Troy Evans maybe shouldn't be in. Maybe Rodney Harrison or Fred Taylor. Everyone else is a pretty strong case to get in. And the guys I mentioned who I don't think are Hall of Famers, you can make it the argument should be. So those are the NFL Hall of Famers. Before we get to the Denver Broncos, the Minnesota Vikings just announced they are benching Nick Mullins, who's thrown 7 interceptions in the 2 games he has started. Thanks to a bit of a quarterback carousel. You lost Kirk Cousins for the year for torn Achilles. First, they started, they make the trade for Josh Dobbs, but still decide to start Jaron Hall, and then he wasn't great and gets hurt. They put Dobbs on. He was playing well for a while. Then Dobbs threw 4 picks against the Bears. And then he got benched for Nick Mullins. Threw for a lot of yards, but he also threw 4 picks last game. He had 7 interceptions in his 2 starts. Now they're benching him, going back to Jaron Hall, the 4th-round rookie at BYU. For the Sunday football game against Green Bay, if they want any shot of being eligible to maybe get a win in Week 18, possibly sneak into the playoffs. They gotta win this game, and they'll be going with the fourth-round rookie Jaron Hall, making his second career start. But in bigger news, the Denver Broncos announced they are benching Russell Wilson, Denver, who is currently 7-8. Playoff teams are fading. They're only at 6%. Probably not going to make it, but still only a game out. They have the Chargers this week, which is, of course, a very winnable game. I actually picked them to win. And I still think they might win because Jared Stidham, I don't think, is that bad of a backup, at least. He played well in the 2 games he played for the Las Vegas Raiders last year after he started in place of Derek Carr. The whole thing is with Russell Wilson, who actually hasn't had that bad of a year. He's got 26 touchdowns against 8 interceptions. He's had a better year than last year, but absolutely horrible. Because if he were to get hurt, there's a clause in his contract. It's an injury guarantee. If he gets hurt, the Denver Broncos will be on the hook for $37 million guaranteed next year. We see this happen a lot. You saw, last year the Raiders pretty much knew they were going to be moving on from Derek Carr. They knew that they would have to pay him no matter what if he got hurt. So that's why they sat in the last 2 games. They were out of the race anyway. But we have seen this many times before. Usually the team is already out of the race. But the Jets did it about probably 7 or 8 years ago with Muhammad Wilkerson, who's not a quarterback. He's an edge rusher. His first 2 years in the league, he was an all-pro, and they gave him a big extension. And then from there, his production wasn't the same. He had some attitude issues, some injury issues. And then they benched him. They benched him 1 game for he had some he had continuous issues like showing up late to meetings and stuff like that. And he made I think he said some stuff to the media he shouldn't have, and just wasn't taking it serious. Was having an overall terrible season. And they think at first they benched him for that, and then they're like, all right, we don't have to pay him next year, and we can cut him and save a lot of money. So this happened. This not the first time it's happened, but usually the team is out of the race. With Denver, they're not out of the race. Their playoff teams are very slim. They're about 6% according to whatever metric the NFL uses, but they're very slim. They're going to have to win out and then get a little help. Do I think they can beat the Chargers? Absolutely. The Chargers are freaking terrible. They got Easton Stick starting. They already fired their coach and their GM, so they're already checked out. They're 5-10. Chargers might as well lose at this point, get a better draft pick, and get themselves another player on defense or an offensive lineman. Tech Herbert. They really need a new coach because good God, Brandon Staley was horrible. But this does happen a lot. But I report came yesterday that apparently a while back, the Broncos approached Russell Wilson and they told him, we need you to take a pay cut or we're going to bench you. And it caught Russell Wilson off guard. So apparently it shocked him. And he got into a whole big dispute, and then it ended up like the NFL got involved, the Players Association got involved, with Russell's representation, the Players Association and the NFL, and nothing got resolved. Nothing got resolved. It was they still had he had the same injury guarantee in his contract. He hadn't taken a pay cut, and then now all of a sudden the Broncos have said, we're done with this. We're benching you, and he expected to be cut in the offseason. First of all, what a disastrous trade that was. But before we get to that, let's talk about I'm dedicating the rest of the show show you just the horrible downfall of the Denver Broncos. Because the Broncos were once a very proud organization. They've won multiple Super Bowls. They've had great players. John Elway is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Terrell Davis is a Hall of Fame running back. Obviously those teams with Mike Shanahan as the head coach when they won 2 Super Bowls with John Elway and Shanahan as the coach. Those teams are legendary. You had Terrell Davis, Shannon Sharp, of course. And now he the analyst who was with Skip Bayless for a while. Now he goes on First Take on ESPN with Stephen A. twice a week. He's a Hall of Fame talent. You had him for a while. Like, they've had some great players, and they're a very proud organization. And they, in 2015, they won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning's last year. He got hurt early on the year. And Brock Osweiler stepped in, he kept them afloat. Then Peyton comes back, late in that last game of the year, 2015. He replaces Brock Osweiler when Brock was struggling. He leads them to victory. They get the 1 seed. Peyton was restored in the playoffs, and he did enough, behind a really good supporting cast. I think they had the best defense in the league that year, and he had a lot of great weapons and a good run game, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl, of course, knocking off the 15-1 Carolina Panthers led by the MVP Cam Newton. They beat them in the Super Bowl. And Peyton Manning, in his last game, won the Super Bowl. It's as great as an ending to what was, of course, a Hall of Fame career in Peyton Manning as he can possibly get. But of course, as he announced, at the beginning of that season, it will be his last year, and he retired at the season. So 2016 rolls around. But Denver, I'm sure they felt good about their chances. You had a quarterback battle between Trevor Siemian, who they took him in the 6th round the year prior. Who they like. They traded up to get Paxton Lynch in the 1st round of the year, but Trevor Siemian beat him out in camp. So he wins a starting job. Broncos like, all right, even though our quarterback situation is a little murky, we still have a really good team. Gary Kubiak's coming into his 2nd year as the head coach of the team. He delivered a Super Bowl in his 1st year as the head coach of the Broncos. Yeah, but 2016, Simeon had an okay year. He started 14 games, but wasn't great. He was okay, but not great. He completed only 59% of his passes for only 3,400 yards, 18 touchdowns against 10 picks. He had a 49.7 QBR. 50 is average for quarterback ratings. So he was basically a slightly below average starter. Both went 9-7 and missed the playoffs. So they had a decent year, but not nearly as good. Missed the playoffs. All right, but then things only got worse. Gary Kubiak decided to step down after the season. He was having some health problems. So I'm going to take some time off from coaching. So he steps down. The Broncos then hired Dolphins defensive coordinator Vance Joseph as their head coach for the 2017 season. So they go in with a new coach. They enter with Trevor Siemian as the starter, and things went really poorly. Siemian was horrible. Started 11 games, completed just 59% of his passes for just 2,200 yards, a little over 2,200 yards. Just 12 touchdowns against 14 interceptions. He was horrible. Paxton Lynch was absolutely horrible. He, in 5 starts across 2 years, he had threw just 4 touchdowns. Absolute bust. Brock Osweiler started 6 games. He wasn't much better. He completed 63% of his passes for just over 1,000 yards, just 5 touchdowns against 5 interceptions. As bad as quarterback plays you can get. They were terrible. There was rumors that Vance Joseph was going to get fired after only 1 year on the job, and they end up going just 5-11. We're not even remotely close to the playoffs. But in 2018, they're like, all right, we need a new quarterback. So they go out and sign Case Keenum. Case Keenum was coming up, who was, for most of his career, was a backup, but had an incredible year in 2017 with the Vikings. Sam Bradford got hurt. He stepped in, had an incredible year. He completed 6-7% of his passes for over 3,500 yards, 22 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Had a really good year. Of course, led the Vikings to the NFC Championship. Had the Minneapolis Miracle in the divisional round. And the last second heat to Stephon Diggs, who stayed in bounds, runs in the end zone. They beat the Saints in the 2nd round of the playoffs that year. One of the greatest moments in NFL history. They signed him for 2 years and $36 million. They think, all right, short-term deal. 18 million a year is pretty fair for a guy coming off a career year. Now we got ourselves what they thought was a decent quarterback. We should be fine. We should be a lot better. Didn't not go as planned. Case Keenum reverted back to the same guy who was a career backup for his entire career. That year completed just 62% of his passes for a little over 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns against 15 interceptions. He was terrible. The team went 6-10, missed the playoffs. Vance Joseph got fired after the year. He was absolutely terrible head coach. He's not even that good of a defensive coordinator. He was okay in Miami as a DC. Wasn't that good in Arizona. He hasn't been that. And now he's back in Denver as a defensive coordinator. He isn't much better. Not really sure why he has a job. In 2019, like, all right, we needed a new quarterback and we need a new head coach. So they brought in Vic Fangio, which at the time, he was the guy who had been a defensive coordinator, for a long time. The Bears defense thrived under him. The year prior, they had the best defense in the entire NFL under him. The players, when they got hired, a couple of players said, he's an absolute mastermind. He's going to be a great head coach. And they made a trade with the Baltimore Ravens to acquire Joe Flacco. Flacco had been the starting quarterback for the Ravens for a very long time. In 2018, he had gotten hurt, but then he was replaced by first-round rookie Lamar Jackson, who played so well at the time when Flacco was healthy. A few weeks later, they decided to keep him on the bench. So obviously they're going to roll with Lamar Jackson. He took him in the first round. He played well, led the Ravens to the playoffs. So Joe Flacco became expendable. So the Broncos sent a 4th-round pick or something like that to the Baltimore Ravens to pick up Joe Flacco. They thought he's still a pretty good quarterback. All right, we finally got a pretty good quarterback. Got a new head coach. Finally, we're going to get back to the playoffs, right? No. Joe Flacco showed he had absolutely nothing left, obviously. I don't know what's going on now. Joe Flacco, he's lighting up the Cleveland Browns. This is 4 years later. But he was not very good at all. In 8 starts, he completed just 65% of his passes. Well, that's actually pretty good. But good for only 1,800 yards. Just 6 touchdowns against 5 interceptions was not very good. He called up the play calling, and then he got hurt at the end of his season. So then they went to Brandon Allen. Despite having a kid in Drew Lock, who was a talented kid out of Missouri, was expected to be a top 10 pick, dropped into the second round, never ended up snatching him in the second round. They started to go up Brandon Allen first, and Brandon Allen started 3 games, was not very good, completed just 46% of his passes, which is atrocious. Just three touchdowns against 2 picks. Then he got hurt, so they were forced to go with Drew Lock, who actually played pretty well. In the 5 starts that Drew Lock started, in the 5 games he started, Lock completed 64% of his passes for just over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns against 3 picks. And the Broncos went 4-1. So although they finished the year at 7-9, and they missed the playoffs for the 4th year in a row after winning the Super Bowl, it appeared maybe they looked like they may have had the quarterback of the future, but they were dead wrong. 2020, they were not very good. Drew Lock was absolutely terrible. In 13 starts a year, he completed just 57% of his passes, just over 2,100 yards, 16 touchdowns against 15 interceptions. I think that was tied for the league lead in interceptions. I think Jeff Driscoll started a game or 2. Brett Rippon, whose dad was a very good quarterback for at the time Washington Redskins, now Washington Commanders. But even when he won a Super Bowl, his son was not that much better. And of course, you had the one game where all the quarterbacks were out with COVID and injuries. They had to start Kendall Hinton, and they had 1 whole completion against the Saints. So things did not go as planned. Drew Lock was, in fact, not the guy, and they went 5-11. Then 2000 and then after the year, John Elway says, you know what? I know I'm a legend here. I had a Hall of Fame career here. And, I did build a championship team. And at the time, he was with general manager of the Denver Broncos. But we've had no luck since then. We've missed the playoffs 5 years in a row since winning the Super Bowl. The last 4 years, we've been under 500. I think it's a step away. So, although he stayed on as the president of football operations, he was not going to be involved in the football decisions. He was giving up the GM role. So 2021, all right, let's get us a new GM with Elway, taking a step back in the organization. They brought in George Patton to be their GM, and they made a trade to get Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater was a first-round pick by the Vikings. First couple of years played well, but had a really bad knee injury, missed almost 2 years of action. The last year was a backup for the Saints, but the previous year in 2020, he started 5 games in place of an injured Drew Brees and played really, really well. Saints went 5-0 in those games. They thought, he's definitely right once again to be a starting quarterback. So they brought him in. They signed him to a 3-year deal for $60 million, $20 million a year. They brought in a new GM, some fresh blood. Here we go. And once again, things did not go as planned. Teddy Bridgewater was very, very mediocre. In 14 starts, he completed 66, almost 67% of his passes, but barely eclipsed 3,000 yards, just 18 touchdowns against 7 interceptions. Wasn't great. And Broncos once again missed the playoffs again. They were going just 7-10. So for the 6th year in a row since winning the Super Bowl, they did not make the playoffs. Head coach Vic Fangio got fired. He didn't have good quarterbacks, but he also was not very good head coach. So in 2022, first offseason for George Patton. So he makes a blockbuster move to acquire Russell Wilson, an 8-time Pro Bowler and a Super Bowl champion for the Seahawks, has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league for a long time. Give up a lot. Give up 3 first-round picks, as well as Drew Lock. Their young quarterback who didn't work out. Chubby Harris, who's a starting defensive lineman. They also give up Noah Fine, who's a starting tight end, and a couple of other mid-round picks, and then they gave Russell Wilson a $245 million contract extension. So it cost them a lot, but at least they got their franchise quarterback, which they've been missing since Peyton Manning retired 7 years ago. They got their guy. They needed a new head coach. They brought in Nathaniel Hackett, who was the offensive coordinator of the Packers the last 2 years, and Aaron Rodgers went back-to-back MVPs in his offense. He's a great offensive mind. Got us a franchise quarterback. We got some nice weapons on offense. We got a good defense. We're going to win 10 games every year now. We're set. Holy hell, were they mistaken? Russell Wilson was absolutely atrocious in 2022. In 15 starts, he completed just over 60% of his passes for 3,500 yards, just 16 touchdowns against 11 interceptions. Nathaniel Hackett was one of the worst head coaches ever. Didn't even last the full season. He was pitifully bad. My team went 5-12. Then this year, somehow George Patton kept his job after that god-awful trade. They brought in Sean Payton, a long-time Saints coach who took a year off to what he called recharging. Of course, he was with the Saints for 14 years. He had a lot of success. He won a Super Bowl. He's going to fix Russell Wilson. The whole reason Russell Wilson sucked was because of Hackett. We got a good team. We're back. Yeah, you were not. Russell Wilson this year played a little better, but, he's completed 66% of his passes. He's thrown for just over 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns against 8 interceptions. He's been better, but still a far cry from what he once was. What made Russell Wilson great was the big arm he used to have, and his ability to make a lot of plays with his legs and improvise. His arm is gone. He's got no arm now. He's freaking Captain Check down at this point in his career. And his mobility, which is still there a little bit, has gone a lot as well. He's not nearly as good. And now he was just benched for Jared Stidham, even though the team is only a game out of the playoffs. He's been playing knowing they're gonna move on from him after the year. Obviously, he knew they were probably gonna bench him at some point for the hopeful speed where they want him to take a pay cut. You saw a few weeks ago Sean Payton screaming at Russell Wilson. And just like that, the Browns gave up 3 first-round picks and 3 players. Two of them didn't really do a whole lot. Drew Lock's a backup quarterback, a bust. No offense, not that good. But Chubby Harris is a good defensive lineman. And a couple other mid-round picks for 2 not very good years out of Russell Wilson and not a single playoff berth. Yikes. And they pay him $245 million, and they're on the hook for a lot of dead cap. I think next year will be $85 million. By this point, they're like, we don't care. He's not good. We don't want him here anymore. Their owner also owns Walmart, so he can afford to pay Russell Wilson $80 million, $85 million to not play for them. And that is the downfall of the Denver Broncos, who are about to go 8 straight years without making the playoffs since winning the Super Bowl. Ladies and gentlemen, the downfall of the Denver Broncos. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Until next time, so long. Have a great day.